So tonight, Jesse Schiffler is going to be presenting Cues to Care and how to help your neighbors understand your ecologically improved property. Now, Jesse, I've known Jesse for a few years. She is a resident of North Coventry Township. She is also the president of the local chapter, the Southeastern Pennsylvania chapter of Wild Ones. So with that, Jesse, welcome. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
All right, John, thanks so much for having me. Thanks everybody for coming to learn all about this great information about native plants I have to share. As John said, I am the chapter president of our local chapter of Wild Ones, which is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to educating people about native plants in the landscape. I talk with Norco EAC about native plants, and I also help volunteer at other organizations that are dedicated to native plants like Natural Lands and Perkiomen and Watershed Conservancy. I'm here to talk to you tonight about the amazing opportunity we have as landowners to improve the lives of so many creatures. The goal is to provide a welcoming oasis for all creatures, including, but not centering on humans. I hope to give you lots of examples of how you can turn your property into an adventure, a place to explore and witness all the lives you can make better by including native plants in your landscape. Insect populations are declining due to many factors: man-made influences like habitat loss from urban and suburban buildings, agricultural land usage with increased pesticide chemicals causing insect death, and lack of forage from poor land use practices. As E.O. Wilson said, insects are the little things that run the world, and without them, our bird populations are declining also. But we as property owners and good citizens of the world can help. We have the power to make a big difference with just a few small changes to how we manage our yards and gardens. Tonight, I will discuss our current township regulation regarding private property lawn maintenance and ways to work within the current rules to improve the ecological functioning of our properties. I will list 12 organizations with programs available to homeowners to provide cues to care to your neighbors, letting them know you're making choices to help save the world. You're not just a lazy homeowner, and I'll answer questions you may have about rewilding your space. This is a picture of my front yard in the middle of summer, full of native plants, both planted and volunteered. It is bountiful. It shows intention and provides life, a sense of place, whereas the invasive turf grass it replaced did not. I don't use supplemental water after the new plants are established, and I never fertilize. These are the current rules in our township. North Coventry has a brush, grass, and weeds ordinance, a maximum of 10 inches. Other than the things listed, you have to mow once by June 1st and one other time each year by August 15th. These are rules that are put in place so that invasive shrubs and trees aren't popping up everywhere. As an example of how our surrounding states and neighborhoods are enacting positive change in this arena, Humane Gardner wrote about her sister's battle versus her HOA in Maryland. Legislation HB 322 was enacted on May 30th and took effect on October 1st, 2021. The bill specified that restriction on land use may not impose unreasonable limitations on low-impact landscaping. That's native plants. They are low-impact landscaping. So legislation is out there. We can follow the good example that's already been set for us. In that vein, let's think more critically about choices we make on our properties, especially for the parts of your property that aren't easily scrutinized by others. Mowing less, planting more natives, and allowing a more relaxed management philosophy to take hold will really invite wildlife to survive. In places highly visible or where others need to walk safely, clear wide paths, edging, and seating areas are all cues to care that show intention. Choosing upright plants that won't flop into pathways or sidewalks will help with maintenance, safety, and visibility. Chances are you never thought of your garden, indeed all of your property, as a wildlife preserve. that represents the last chance we have for sustaining plants and animals that were once common throughout the US. But that is exactly the role our suburban landscapes are playing. That's Doug Tallamy, who we are fortunate enough to call a resident of Chester County. He's an entomologist at the University of Delaware and a nationally known speaker for native plant diversity, being the basis of a functioning food web. So, let me give you some resources to help you become that wildlife preserve to sustain plants and animals. Throughout this presentation, I tried to label the majority of the pictures so that if you want to see these same critters or flowers on your property, you have the botanical name to jot down so that at the end, there's a list of resources. You can go to those nurseries and ask for those plants that you saw here. Every picture in this presentation is from my property. We're all in the same area. All of these plants can work for you too. A sneak peek of some of the programs we're going to talk about. The Penn State Master Gardeners are taking action to protect pollinators by educating the public about the importance of planting pollinator-friendly gardens. This program is the best of the best. Just reading through the application is a lesson in what we should all be doing on our properties. It's a great place to start, and it sets goals to aspire to achieve. The program was revised in August of 2021 and now has an online application available. So you just work to meet the requirements, follow the examples in the application. You have to provide food for pollinators, provide water sources for pollinators, provide shelter for pollinators, safeguard habitat by removing invasive plants and invasive insects, and protecting native plant communities. And you have to safeguard habitat by reducing or eliminating entirely the use of pesticides. Photos are required when submitting the application. So as you're implementing the things that you're learning about in the application, take pictures along the way. It's really fun to see the journey. This program really stresses the importance of ecologically maximizing your available space by selecting native plants to fulfill the roles of host plants for the larval stage and nectar pollen sources for the adult stage of butterflies and moths. And there's a close relationship. So you need to have at least 4 species of native trees and shrubs, and at least 3 species of native perennial flowers per bloom season. Some people will already be well on their way to achieving these requirements, and some people will have to add slowly until they finally have all of the pieces in place to meet the requirements, but it's well worth the journey. This is just a snapshot of what the application looks like. The process includes checking off the requirements you've met and providing photos of your property. I included this beautiful bog-faced hornet's nest that was only 1 foot off the ground. We didn't even know it was there when we were walking within 2 feet of it all summer. The nests aren't reused the next year, but the leftover larvae make a great high-protein snack for birds over winter. We had talked a little bit about host plants, so I wanted to draw attention to the difference between host plants, which are fed on by the larval stage, and then nectar plants, which provide sugary rewards to adult pollinators. Sometimes those plants they're both host and nectar plants. Doug Tallamy and other leading edge ecologists talk about keystone plants being native plants critical to the food web and necessary for many wildlife species to complete their life cycle. Without keystone plants in the landscape, butterflies, native bees, and birds will not thrive. 96% of our terrestrial birds rely on insects supported by keystone plants. So when you're making tough decisions about what plants to include in your landscape, consider how many species can be supported by your choices. And here are some resources. The National Wildlife Federation has a website, a native plant finder, that lists the amount of species that are supported by each plant species so that you can really go for those high-hitting ones. This is what the sign looks like when you've achieved this first program. It's a $10 application fee to the Penn State Master Gardeners Program Fund, and if approved, the sign is a $30 fee. The second program we're going to talk about tonight is the National Wildlife Federation Habitat Certification. The National Wildlife Federation is the largest conservation organization in the US, and they recognize that wildlife habitat gardens are a haven for local birds, butterflies, and other wildlife. Wildlife means all creatures, the beautiful butterflies and the lovely spiders who will help control pests in your garden, the pretty fuzzy bees and the cool looking flies. Protect them all so they can fulfill their roles within the ecosystem. Even some things you think of as pests, like the sawfly larvae in the picture on the bottom left, are actually great bird food. So don't reach for your chemicals as a knee-jerk reaction to every new creature. To achieve this certification, you have to think about soil and protecting it by minimizing pesticide use, decreasing gas-powered engine use for maintenance and that protects the air, and safeguarding our water, both for native plants to absorb excess rainwater with their deep root systems, but also things like picking up your pet waste so that you're not polluting the groundwater. The requirements are that you are having food accessible, that means native plants and optional supplemental feeders, a water source so that the animals can survive, bathe, and breed, cover, which just means shelter from weather and predators, and a place to raise their young. And they need resources to do that. Cover doesn't have to be man-made. These animals have been evolving for thousands of years to live off the land. We just have to give them the chance to do it. It is a $20 application fee. And then if you choose to put the sign out, it's a $30 fee for the sign, full color. It's a metal sign with pre-drilled holes for mounting. And then when you display your sign, you can keep adding to your planting beds, decreasing your turf grass, and increasing biodiversity. And then you can just relocate your sign to the front as it gets covered by your plants. The third program tonight is through North American Butterfly Association, and it's a certified butterfly garden. The NABA works to conserve butterflies and their habitats throughout North America, both by direct action and by educating the public about the importance of butterflies and their habitat. Simple requirements for this one. You have to provide 3 nectar plants and 3 host plants, providing 3 or more of different blooming plants in each season from early spring until late fall. Massing 3 or more of the same plant together is both visually more appealing and more energy efficient for pollinators, especially those who have a limited range in which they can fly due to their small size. Make sure you have various sizes and shapes of flowers to allow many different kinds of pollinators to forage. So I gave you some examples here of nectar plants and host plants. It's a $15 fee if you are certifying your individual home garden. If you're an institution, like you want to do this at your business or your school, it's a $25 institution certification fee. And each sign is $25. If you're trying to achieve the certified monarch garden, you have to have milkweed in your garden. Which leads us well into our 4th program of the night, the monarchwatch.org. It's a monarch waste station certification. Milkweeds and nectar sources are declining due to development and the widespread use of herbicides in croplands, pastures, and roadsides. Because 90% of all milkweed monarch habitat occur within the agricultural landscape, farm practices have the potential to strongly influence monarch populations. Monarchwatch.org has an informative website that gives lots of information on monarch conservation, rearing, tagging, and monitoring. And they also include info about starting a butterfly garden, listing specific butterfly and host plant relationships. Because this is a monarch-specific organization, their host plants are only related to monarchs. Pay attention to the native range of the milkweed species listed as options. Only some of them are native to this ecoregion. The majority of plants listed are native, though they do include some non-native, non-invasive species as possible nectar plants. However, you can do this with just native plants also and still meet their certification requirements. This is one of the butterfly gardens I used to certify our property. This picture is taken at the end of May, and the 9-bark and zizia are blooming. Zizia is in the carrot family and is the native host plant for the black swallowtail butterfly caterpillar, so you can plant zizia for the caterpillars and keep your parsley, fennel, and dill for yourself. Earlier than this picture was taken, the pussy willow in the back provided high protein pollen to early emerging queen bumblebees. And a month after this picture, the swamp milkweed will be blooming, providing food for monarch caterpillars, and the Joe Pye will provide nectar to adult butterflies. In the fall, old field asters will provide nectar for migrating butterflies and all sorts of bees trying to get ready for winter. This is the Monarch Way Station sign. It's a non-refundable application fee of $16 for each habitat you would like to certify. This helps offset the costs associated with processing your application, including adding your habitat to the online registry, and also helps support Monarch Watch's conservation efforts. The sign and registration bundle package is $33. Our fifth program tonight is through Nurture Nature Center. The Nurture Nature Center and the Penn State Extension Master Watershed Steward Program collaborated to finalize the development of the Watershed Friendly Program and will be conducting outreach activities throughout Pennsylvania. The Master Watershed Steward Program transforms citizens into a managed, educated, organized volunteer force addressing local conservation priorities. The goal of this project is to expand the number of watershed-friendly properties throughout the Commonwealth, while at the same time educating residents, communities, educational institutions, and businesses about the value of a healthy watershed and best practices for improving water quality. Healthy landscapes make healthy communities. Certifying your property has many benefits, including protecting your local streams and rivers and all the life that depends on clean water, promotes habitat for birds, fish, and other wildlife, recognizes your commitment to best practices managing water on your property, educates others about healthy watersheds, brings awareness to the program, helps support the Master Watershed Steward Program, provides you with tools and resources to achieve a watershed-friendly status, and gives you bragging rights for all of your hard work. Similar to the Penn State Extension Master Gardener's Pollinator-Friendly Garden Certification, reading through the application for this certification is an amazing education in what we should all be doing on our properties to improve water quality and protect our waterways. The 4 goals are listed there: reducing stormwater runoff by decreasing turfgrass lawn, planting rain gardens and bioswales, reducing pollution to eliminate the use of pesticides, pick up pet waste, conserve water, don't ever water the lawn. Think about installing a rain barrel and plant native plants to help absorb that excess rainwater through their extended root systems, and support wildlife and pollinators by removing invasives, leaving the leaves, and adding brush piles. Photos are required showing how you are managing stormwater runoff, including rain barrel usage, decreasing turf grass by planting native plants with longer root systems. The application process includes checking off the requirements you've met and providing photos of your property. This area used to just be useless turf grass in the swale running along the side of our property. Every time we got a heavy rain, it would run like a river into the street. To help mitigate that problem, I planted dozens of moist, soil-loving native plants in this area, from plugs of herbaceous flowers to tiny stick-sized shrubs and trees. This picture is taken 18 months after the planting. It doesn't take long to make a big difference. Now, when it rains, the water is slowed down by the above-ground plant material and soaked up by the extensive root systems of these native plants. Our 6th program is through Audubon, and it's the Bird-Friendly Habitat Certification. Audubon, Maryland, DC, and Audubon, Pennsylvania have joined forces to become Audubon Mid-Atlantic now. Whether you're planting a container garden on a patio, adding to your garden, swapping out some lawn for pollinator plants, or managing a meadow or woodlot, your home can provide vital habitat and contribute to community conservation. It all starts with native plants. Birds and insects need native plants. For many, native plants provide essential food they simply can't get from other types of plants. Add a water source and some shrub and tree layers to provide shelter and nesting sites, and you're well on your way to creating bird-friendly habitat. Enrolling your home in the Bird-Friendly Habitat Recognition Program connects you with a growing community of people across the region who garden with ecology in mind. all contributing to a ripple effect of stewardship that benefits people, birds, and the places we share. A reminder to be protective of birds during their nesting seasons. Natural elements are part of the application process and they're marked by an asterisk. You must have at least 2 items from the food category, including 1 type of native plant and at least 1 item from each of the remaining categories in order for your property to qualify. The second part of the application, in addition to a bird-friendly garden, there are many other ways to support and protect birds on your property. Please tell us more about your property and the ways you help birds and the places they need. And that's by supporting and protecting, by providing native plants, enhancing the habitat by removing invasive and leaving the leaves, supporting clean water and stormwater management by no pesticide use and using a rain barrel, and reducing bird window collisions by making markings on your windows and reducing nighttime lighting, and reducing unnecessary predator threats by always keeping cats indoors, providing brush piles, and situating your bird feeders close to trees so that the birds can come to the feeder and then skip off into the tree for protection. There are thoughtfully designed templates that cover a variety of light, soil, and moisture conditions that can be found on the Audubon website. Each native plant is included on the planting diagram, and most can be found on the Audubon's Birdie Dozen list. They helped make it simple to choose the design that best suits your space. You can take it to your local garden center or landscaper and get exactly what you're looking for. Enrollment with the yard sign for your bird-friendly habitat certification is $25. And this is an example that shows dead trees, which attract insects that birds love to eat, fallen leaves, standing seed heads to feed the birds all winter, a supplemental feeder that I have to admit I often don't fill. Nest box is just out of the view of this picture, and a brush pile is right behind this picture. The 7th program tonight is the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. The goal of the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden was to add 500 additional pollinator gardens in 2021, explaining that you can provide beautiful, vital habitat for pollinators by adding pollinator-friendly plants to your yard and landscape. Enjoy colorful blooms all season long that bring many beautiful butterflies and other pollinators to your yard. It's easy to do. Whether planting just a few pots or a larger garden, you can do real conservation at home to support our pollinator friends as they do their job to keep our environment healthy. There are simple requirements, very simple. You just have to have 1 or more host plants and 1 or more nectar plants. Easy peasy. Some plants are so important they can serve both functions, like the New England aster and common blue violet pictured in the bottom left corner. Registering your garden is free, and you're placed on the map of registered gardens. Our 8th program is the Pollinator Partnership Certified Bee-Friendly Farming Garden. This is not just for farms. Pollinator Partnership's motto, protect their lives, preserve ours, and their mission to promote the health of pollinators critical to food and ecosystems through conservation, education, and research. Their signature initiatives include the North American Pollinator Protection Campaign, National Pollinator Week, and the Eco-Regional Planting Guide. The bee-friendly farming newest and most unique category of registration is specifically designed for home and community gardeners who promote and provide habitat and pollinator health in non-commercial settings. Bee-Friendly Farming Garden has been designed to distinguish these members from commercial farming enterprises or sponsors, as well as highlighting gardeners who follow the specified guidelines in providing for pollinators and offering a diverse and permanent habitat source at a scale at or above a small home garden. So you have to provide for bee forage, and that means flowering plants through 4 seasons, clean water source, which means responsibly using rainwater, maybe having a garden feature, and nesting habitat, which can include bare ground and dead trees. In addition, the BFF garden registration means limiting or avoiding the use of harmful pesticides on blooming plants and paying the annual $20 registration fee. The application process includes checking off the requirements you've met and providing photos of bee forage and nesting habitat on your property. So to apply, I sent in these 2 photos demonstrating fallen leaves, standing stems, woody shrubs, and brush piles. And it's very hard to make out, but there's actually a hawk on the chair in the back of the right picture. So this is what the sign looks like. Additional printable signs are available that can be amended using a PDF editor and printed on any material you choose if you prefer not to pay for the metal sign. And depending on where you live in PA, you may want to consult either the Continental or the Oceanic Province Planting Guide, but most of us, especially here in this township, will be using the Eastern Broadleaf Forest Continental Pollinator Guide for selecting plants. Our 9th program tonight is the Pollinator Partnership. It's a registration and a sign. It's not a certification. Establishing pollinator-friendly habitats and food sources for bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, and other pollinating insects and wildlife. This is one of my pathways, full of volunteer old field aster, provides much needed pollen and nectar for late season pollinators. This is in October, and my yard is full of blooms and therefore full of activities. How to join. Everyone can join by adding native pollinator friendly plants, subtracting a little lawn, whether that be to cut it high or reduce the size, and avoid the use of pesticides and lawn chemicals. Residents can add anywhere from 1 pollinator-friendly tree or planting to a small pollinator garden to a full meadow. Lists of Northeast native pollinator plants are available here at the website on the screen. An example of native plants in the herbaceous, perennial, and evergreen categories. No pesticides are used. Bare ground and autumn leaves will be available when they fall. Dead wood is incorporated into the beds and as borders and interest pieces. Registering your garden is free, and you're placed on the map of registered gardens. No pesticides, as shown with these sawfly larvae. The birds come and take care of that issue, and then the fruit is not poisoned for the other birds that will come and eat them. The Pollinator Pathway has joined forces with the Million Pollinator Garden Challenge, which has surpassed its goal of registering 1 million gardens and landscapes to support pollinators and is still growing. Add your home garden as well as any town gardens, containers, or meadows along the Pollinator Pathway. When you register, choose Pollinator Pathway as your referring organization so we can keep track of the growth of your pathway and spread the word. Our 10th program tonight is Homegrown National Park, Start a New Habitat. It is a grassroots call to action to regenerate biodiversity and ecosystem function by planting native plants and creating new ecological networks. With an initial goal of 20 million acres of native plantings in the US, this represents approximately half of the green lawns of privately owned properties. Doug Tallamy is the professor of Ag and Natural Resources in the Department of Entomology and Wildlife Ecology at the University of Delaware. He lives in Chester County. His book, Bringing Nature Home, I mentioned before, changed the way I saw the world. Gardening, owning land, and giving back. He teaches the fundamental concept that native plants provide the food to feed caterpillars, and in turn, those caterpillars are fed to baby birds, and that energy is transferred right up the food chain. The map is an interactive community-based visual that will show each person's contribution to planting native by state, county, and zip code. Importantly, the map is a way for individuals to see their part in the greater whole, creating new ecological networks and restoring biodiversity. Planting in layers to provide soft landings for pupating insects, leaving the leaves for shelter and erosion protection, and providing the ability to enjoy 4 seasons of beauty. This is from Homegrown National Park's website. Plantings can introduce surprise, anticipation, and entertainment into our landscapes, and they have health benefits. We are entering the ecocene era where we have the ethical and ecological will to sustain life. By planting things like this, providing serenity and joy for humans and vital resources for insects. When I made this presentation, signs had not been available for the Homegrown National Park, but I believe they actually are now. There are organizations that are selling them. A printable PDF version is available on the website to take to your printer and display in your yard. The 11th program tonight's the Xerces Society, the Pollinator Habitat Sign. Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation is an international nonprofit organization that protects the natural world through the conservation of invertebrates and their habitats. As a science-based organization, they both conduct their own research and rely upon the most up-to-date information to guide their conservation work. Their key program areas are pollinator conservation, endangered species conservation, and reducing pesticide use and impacts. They have beautiful signs to display when you are converting the majority of your turf grass front lawn into a pollinator haven. Edging to show intention while the plants grow in. This is actually the older version of the sign.